You're tuned into RX Radio. Movement prescribed. Brought to you by Prescript.com. A personalized approach to keeping you healthy and making your best even better. Your hosts, Dr. Jordan Shallow and Dr. Jordan Ginta.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of RX Radio. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Jordan Shallow. So a special episode for you today. This is probably one of the favorite interviews I got to do, and actually one of the first interviews I got to do in person amidst all this COVID stuff. Definitely love sitting in a room with someone and getting to riff, especially with this guy, just out of the gate. You know, a lot of you guys listen to this, are coaches or clinicians, maybe even athletes. And a lot of people reach out to me and ask for advice on coaches or come to me with coaching. And if anyone's ever, approached me about me coaching them, I keep a really small, I keep a small team of athletes. But oftentimes I give referrals out to Prescript coaches. And one of the benefits of the level 1 course is we're starting to index and working on the framework of a directory for all of our coaches. As I think the people that go through our program, at the very least, I think we self-select very well for just a very high caliber of coach. So if any of you have emailed me about coaching, you've likely been referred to this guy. James Macintosh is one of my favorite people on the planet. Hidden gem does not begin to describe this guy. And it's funny, I even told him, like, look, man, we're not going to do an intro because you're going to be too humble and you're going to try and cut me off when I talk about you. So, James, I get to do this and I'm fucking 8,000 kilometers away, so you can't say shit. If you're an athlete looking for a coach, if you're a gym goer looking for a coach, I cannot recommend James enough. He's worked with us for some time now. James and I met in Australia late last year, and just getting to know him and his backstory, it's hilarious to me that some people ascend the ranks of social media with just doing nonsensical shit just for the gram, where it's like this guy's backstory, and this is what we talk about today. It's just all like stories. It's like storytelling, and his story is fucking crazy. If you guys are seeing the title of the episode, it'll give you some indication of what James gets up to. But I think his backstory lends such perspective, and watching the way he coaches, I mean, from female WBFF competitors to male bodybuilders, I go to him with insights on my programming. If you are looking for a coach, shoot James a message on Instagram, shoot him an email. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. I really we've had Stu on. Killian is a regular spot and will continue to be. And just a little sidebar there, some huge stuff coming from Killian Hamilton. So if you're a fan of what he does, do go follow Killian. Stu has been crushing it with the barbell course. Really excited to kick that off next week for all you guys who signed up for that. If you missed it, do send us an email. We'll get you on the wait list for next semester, which will be teed up early next year. Junta's got some crazy stuff in the pipe right now with Olympic weightlifting and the education side of things. A really unique course coming from Dr. J. So, I think we've assembled and continue to assemble through the level 1 course just a group of killers. And I don't necessarily want to use that word lightly when talking to James. Judging off the title, it's going to be an interesting episode. Amazing perspective, amazing skill set in dealing with the technical side, the psychological, and the physiological. James is one of the best coaches, one of my favorite people on the planet. It's fucking someday I gotta watch this David Goggins guy run on Instagram and call me a bitch. Like, fuck that. Like, this guy's running through the forest in fucking South Africa getting shot at by by rhino poachers. Like, that's the real deal. It wasn't on the gram. Paramedic in one of the most dangerous emergency medical situations or emergency medical services in the world. And now we're lucky enough to have him on board with us at Prescript. So, I mean, for those of you guys, and even coaches too, right? Like, I think one of the best things I've ever done as a coach is to get a coach. And I'm lucky now to be able to have in my back pocket, an army of about 1,000 level 1 coaches, and I can reach out at any time and talk technique and just kind of riff on some things for my own programming. And he's usually one of the tops of the list. Basically, my Seinfeld speed dial is who I think to be some of the sharpest minds in the industry. James is a brilliant dude on both sides of the coin. He just gets it. He's been through the fucking ringer and back, inside and outside the gym. So guys, hope you enjoy this episode. It is one of my favorites. I've actually listened to it a handful of times prior to releasing it. Just go over, check out James on Instagram. I'm sure it's just James Macintosh. You'll see him there. I'll put all the links to him in the show notes as well. Guys, do appreciate your time. If you are looking to stay in touch with what we got coming up with Junta, I'm not going to release it yet. Junta's got some awesome work coming through the pipe in post-production right now. Killian is really going to change the paradigm for, I think, strength programming, periodization, and it's geared a little bit towards the skill acquisition model. So get on our mailing list at www.pre-script.com. As always, guys, I do appreciate you guys listening. Downloads have been crazy. Appreciate you guys sharing and all that fun stuff. So, if you guys like it, leave a review and all that jazz. If you don't, the guy left a fucking 1-star review. Really, man? Come on. But, if you got a problem with us, send us a text message. If you don't have our fucking number, you don't have a problem with it. Just kidding. Love most of you guys, almost all of you guys, except that guy who left a 1-star review. Anyways, I'm rambling now, guys. Reach out to James if you're looking for a coach that's worth his salt. James is my go-to, in accordance with some of our other pre-script coaches in the ranks, Killian and Stu. But hope you guys enjoy the episode, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. So it's crazy to me, and I've talked about this before, that I can work in an industry. And I like to think I'm balls deep in this fucking thing now. This is what when someone asks me what I do, it's just it would be easier to just tell them I'm a drug dealer, because most people assume it's he fucking he's all over the place, he flies around, he's got to be doing something illegal. And to be in the fitness industry and to have someone who's so big in the industry, like monetarily, she's worth $500 million.
Yeah, she does stupid amounts of money.
Right, and for me to up until COVID, I had no idea who she was. Until I was stuck in on, no fucking clue. And it's how could J.P. Morgan Chase knows about Deutsche Bank? They know, because they're monsters in the same industry. It's not who the fuck is that? Who is this guy on Wall Street? We've never heard of this before. Yeah. But fitness is a weird one. But if you look at it, it's all just community shit. And it's all about all they're selling is identity.
Yeah, and exactly. It's the identity of being associated with that. Or I do whatever app's called, or whatever, sweat.
Hemsworth has got one too.
Yeah, I saw that. But that's the whole point, is they sit there and that's what they're associating the brand with. I think someone obviously approached them and was let's do a fitness app with you. That's as simple as it is. They make stupid money off what his identity is, and that's, I suppose, what the fitness industry is. You are who you associate yourself with.
Sure, and that is so more true now than I think it's ever been. But I think that you can look at that two ways. That can be discouraging, that someone like Kayla signs, and again, nothing against her, know nothing about her, I'm totally fucking neutral, don't care. Hey, 500 racks, you have my blessing.
Yeah.
She just tells about her story. That's what it is. Then it's if that's the game, win the game. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, or she's manipulated the game to her benefit. That's the other side of it, don't you think?
Yeah, but I mean, if she's proof of concept that the game can be rigged, then rig the game.
Yeah.
Win the game.
Yeah.
And I think the hard part now is dude, we're in a world where we're past participation trophies.
Yeah.
We want to be at the ceremony to watch people get we're so sitting in the stands with the way I know little kids 4 or 6 years old that don't even play video games anymore. They watch YouTube videos of people playing video games.
Yeah.
This is how far removed. So it's if they're associated with sweat and they found some sort of glitch in the matrix, sweet. Expose it, fine, do it. As long as you're not hurting anyone, I think it's okay.
But how does that go? For me, I'm not going to associate myself with someone or something that's not aligned with my values.
Right.
So that's the other side of it, is like, is that correct or right? Because I might see that and go, cool, I have the opportunity to jump onto sweat, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But they don't align with the way I think, my thought process or values.
Right. And
I'm not gonna sell my soul.
Right. But there's an essence there that I think is transferable. What you do with that message, like, you know, Toyota knows that they make, I mean, Toyota makes good cars, right? Once they stopped killing people with the gas pedal, it wasn't their fault. It was totally,
it just happened.
Well, there's no, honestly, dude, I looked at the research, it was totally user error. Malcolm Gladwell talks about it in one of his podcasts called Revisionist History. If you haven't listened to it, fucking listen to it. Canadian, shouts out Malcolm Gladwell. But it's like, you know, if Toyota knows they don't make great cars, right? Compared to like Bugatti.
Yeah.
Right. Bugatti's not going to come out with a $30,000 option. They're selling the Veyron for like 1.5, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, but Toyota and Bugatti both sell cars the same way.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, you can tell a better story. They only make fucking 7 Bugattis a year, whatever it is. Right? You need like a credit check just to get into like the dealership. Right.
Yeah.
But they're both using the same way to sell cars. Right, so whether it's like, you know, I would look at you and be like more of a like Bugatti product with a certain level, because Bugatti has a certain level of values.
Yeah.
They want to make the fastest vehicle on the planet, right? They want to make the fastest production vehicle. Like the second, what's his name, went 407 kilometers an hour in like fucking Nuremberg or wherever it was. That just told a good enough story.
Yeah. It elevated them to that extra level type stuff.
Right. And that's going to attract the mindset of someone who that's their value. And people who are motivated to be the superlative, type A, whether you're Floyd Mayweather, right? Floyd's going to watch that thing in Top Gear and he's going to get onto his homie and be like, yo, concierge, put this in my driveway tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, he's going to get 80 racks to find some sheik in Dubai, then put it on a cargo plane. If he can get it in there, and this is a true story, right? This is a true story.
Yeah.
But that's the story that Bugatti told the world, right? And what is Toyota like? Yeah, you know, get the Sienna. Look at the stow and go, right? Like, look how much, right? It's like, look how much cargo space we got in this bitch. Your kids go to soccer practice. We go to the drive-in, and like, someone's gonna look at that with a couple kids, and be like, oh, that's what I mean. That's a story, right? So it's like you can't run away from it. It's just and like the problem is in the fitness space, good or bad, the platforms in which we can tell our stories are so readily accessible that it just comes down to the fact who's telling a better story. And I think the key and the interesting thing about talking about you is the story's gotta be real, right? And there's a certain way where you can start to introduce characters, right? Like you get to a certain level where like, you know, fucking what's her name? J.K. Rowling. Yeah, she didn't get richer than the Queen by accident. This bitch was tactical, right? Like, look at the way, but what did she do? She took the oldest stories ever and retold them in a palatable way. Yeah. Right? Like, you know, the character interactions of like tell me Dumbledore, like Dumbledore and Snape couldn't have been looked at like Scar and Mufasa in a way.
It's the exact same principle behind it. That she's just told it in a way that could relate to people, you know, in a different perspective. They look at it and go, yeah, it's magic, it's cool, it's flashy, it's something different. It was and still is very popular at the time.
Well, it's like, tell me there's a difference between broomsticks and walking on water. Yeah. Right? One's Jesus, one's Hazza, like, it's the same shit, right? It wasn't by accident that she told that story, but in confidence behind that, she licensed an ability to start telling more outlandish stories, right? But she could do it in a way that works. Like, this is a ridiculous place to live for 12 days. I understand that. I totally get it. Yeah. But I understand the story behind what I do for a living, and it's like, at a certain point, people don't want to see me like, you know, Rocky 2-ing it up the stairs and living in the cardboard box. Like, because I know the association. Yeah. Right? People want to associate with someone who gets to talk about the things they like to talk about, and, you know, I don't see all the other, like me up at fucking 3 a.m. on the phone, leave that shit out of it. But like, when I look at 2 different Airbnbs, and one looks at that, and one looks at a fucking brick wall, what story do you want to tune into? Like Instagram, like shouts out Mark Zuckerberg for doing like the fuck China move and going, TikTok, I got you. Reels. Sure.
What is
like Instagram story? Like when I first heard it, I was like, story? What? Oh, you motherfucker, right? And with you, it's like in your story. It's the best fucking story ever. It's like Die Hard in the jungle, like, and it's like, to me, because at the end of the day, it's reps and sets. Like, I don't think anyone's reinventing the wheel here.
No.
So when it comes to like coaches with good stories that relay their values to their clients and can do it through lived experience, because that's the thing, the story has to be real. Because people can smell bullshit. People are stupid, but people know when they're being taken.
Yeah.
Right? Like.
Well, I hope so. I think that's the other side of it is.
I think when we start to deal with people that align with your values and the stories you tell, they're a type of person that can smell bullshit.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, it's that upper class, it's the Bugatti. That's the type of clientele, the people that I'd like to associate with and hopefully help. That's the idea that I'm trying to push across.
Right. I guess. And I think the easiest way is just like getting some idea. Like, tell me where someone was 5 years ago, and I'll tell you where they'll be in 5 years.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, your story is fucking crazy. So, like, first off, we don't work as a normal podcast because we're 10 minutes in. I'll intro all this on the front end. But, like, how did you get into fitness? Like, take it from like 5 years or 10 years back, because you obviously were in Australia. If anyone who gets fluent with accents will understand that yours is not an Australian accent.
Yeah.
You sound like I'm on the set of Lethal Weapon 2. Like, I just want to say South Africa, like, and just be totally offensive. Like, I want to be Hans right now, and make sure I'm standing on plastic. But like, so how do you end up? So what were you doing in South Africa? How did you get into fitness and lifting? And then how did that bring you here and leave no armed detail out of this?
No armed detail. Yeah, so, I mean, I started lifting, started getting into fitness when I was 15. I got an opportunity to play for a men's Premier League in hockey. What do you call it? Grass Quidditch? I think that's the one. It's not proper hockey. It's not hockey. And I was just too small. Like, I was getting fucked up. Like, I had these men pushing me around, and I was like, that's it, getting bigger. And I just spent every day trying to get into the gym, trying to get bigger, trying to get stronger. And ultimately, that's where I went and got to a point where I was playing at a good level and got injured. And unfortunately, you know, we all know that with high level sports, we get injured. And I made the emotional decision of, like, at that time it was final year of school, and I kind of wanted to go into sports science or whatever the degree was. And I made the emotional decision to just not do it. I was like, fuck it, I don't want to do that. I went into emergency medicine, and I studied to be a paramedic in South Africa, which difficult, very, very difficult environment.
The medic in Coogee is like, oh mate, the surfboard hit me in the face.
Yeah.
Like, oh crikey, let's put a band-aid on it. Like, let's go put, like, but like, thinking of just the gravity of that, you were a medic in South Africa. What year is this?
2014, 2013.
Yeah.
So
Google search South Africa news 2014.
There's any given day there'll be multiple stabbings, gunshots, car wrecks from drunken drivers, like, you name it, it's there. Like, South Africa is the teaching environment for most emergency doctors. Like, around the world, they'll do an internship at, like, Baragwanath in Johannesburg, because you see the most trauma you'll ever see in your little, like, apprenticeship or whatever they call it, than you'll ever see in your entire life. Like, that's as simple as it is.
Yeah.
And Baragwanath Hospital is, like, I've worked there on bad shifts, and just the principle there is you see one, do one, teach one. And that's literally how it occurs. Like, you see someone crike someone or surgical crike someone, and the next one you do, and you teach the next person. That's it. That's as simple as it is, and that's why it's such a good environment. But you come across things that I'll never find here, and I'm glad I never will. Like, fuck me up.
Oh, sure.
I'll like, that's why I stopped doing it. I became a person who just like had no empathy for anyone. Like my girlfriend at the time, I think she had a death in the family or something, and like we're all sitting around and like mourning this guy, and I literally looked at her and I was like, it's death, get over it, and I carried on.
You gonna finish that?
Yeah. It's
German chocolate cake.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have some of that.
So like I was doing that, and I think it was my first or second shift, and I landed up coming across some bad accidents, and I landed up declaring a guy who had been hit by his son on the motorbike track, basic skull fracture on the tar track. I was pumping his chest, I was doing CPR, blood going everywhere. We tried to like everything, adrenaline, we tried to bring it back, took it to clinic. And I had to turn around at the age of 18, go and speak to the 16-year-old son and be like, you killed your dad. Like that's as simple as it was. Like he was a running start on the track, and the guy flipped the bike and his son came through and basically hit him in the back of the head, and that was it. Like, imagine it at 18, that was my first week of experience, I suppose. I saw 4 deaths that day, I think it was. All motorbike accidents, and that's how I got thrown into the thick of it. No one teaches you that. No one teaches you how to cope with that.
Yeah, there's no book. I remember, man, I haven't told this story. One of my close friends growing up pulled one of our other friends' dads out of the garage while he was trying to smoke himself. Like, had a car running, and like anyone from Windsor knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, that was 14 years ago, and I still can't talk about it. And I wasn't even there. And my buddy was going down like a business route.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even going to be a paramedic. But he was walking home and he saw, I'm not going to say the last name, but he saw the garage smoking up. And he went in and realized quickly like what was going on, pulled his dad out of the car, dragged him around the street, kept him alive and long enough to say goodbye to his family, and then totally changed his life. Now he's a paramedic. He's like, look, like it's almost like he was so calloused after that.
Yeah.
Like, obviously our friend whose father passed was like, you know, there's no, I mean, I grew up in a place where I can't, on the top of my head, list the number of friends that I have whose fathers have committed suicide. Like, that's the kind of place. And so he kind of took this and was like, look, I'm like, it breaks you. Like, I saw him change from that day. He was a totally different person. And like, obviously my friend whose father passed, like, that was unbelievably traumatic. But like, there was 2 victims, right? Like, there was my friend and his family, but there's my buddy that pulled him out and like saved, because now, not that, I mean, he does so good and so well now, but like, he's like, this is what I do now. Like, this is, I can't, because someone else will have to go through that to be able to be proficient at this job.
Yeah.
And he was similar age, man, 17, 18 years old. And it's like, I don't think there's a point where you're ever ready for that.
No, I don't think there's no learning, there's no textbook, there's no conversation you can have with anyone who's like, this is how you deal with death. This is how you deal with coming to an accident scene and like some dude's been decapitated, or there's a head coming through the front windscreen. Like that's real. That's what happens.
To me, it's crazy because it recalibrates a perspective that I think if everyone, you would never wish it on anyone. Like, and I just know it peripherally. Like, I've been really close with people who have, you know, unfortunately, like, loved ones have taken their own life or have died, like, unfortunately, but I've never been at the scene. And it's changed me. Like, I remember being a pallbearer, in a funeral procession for another friend whose father committed suicide, just like a few years later. And that being 18, 19, like, that event changed me. Obviously changed the entire family forever, but like, the son found the dad, right? Like, but if people had end of life perspective without having to experience it, I think the world would be so fucking different.
I think we'd see a lot less people sweating the small stuff. Like, it's a different perspective on life when you've experienced it. Like, you've seen the side of death. Like, you've seen the outcome that occurs when you walk in on the person who's, you know, just committed suicide or, you know, died of a heart attack. Like, I walked in we got called to a patient of a guy who had a TIA, or a trans ischemic attack, on the toilet, pushing him shit too hard. But that's as simple as it was. That's like, I laugh about it now, but like family distraught, like, you know, facial droop, dudes not in a good space, and you like that's
You have to. Like, I think
have to,
humor is one of the only ways you can get through it. Like, my buddy that found our buddy's dad, like, he has that. Otherwise, like, because I know paramedics, I know the military especially. Like, there's two types of people I know in the military. Guys who are next level funny. Like, my friend Dylan Park. Dylan Park's the writer in LA. And, like, very prolific. The stuff he writes, he did a show called 68 Whiskey on HBO because he was in Afghanistan, and his sense of humor is so good that it makes you wonder if that's the Band-Aid, like how big's the hole, like if the humor's, and he's like, every time I'm around Dilly I'm fucking crying laughing, but every time I leave I don't know what to do with myself because it's like, man, that guy is so funny for a reason. Like, that is to cope with something, and if he's that funny, that what he's coping for is like, I don't want to know. Right? But I think that end of life, those terms, like that last bill of rights, like your like will and testament, it gives you some certainty. Right? It gives you some certainty, and all of a sudden it's like, that's everything exists between here and here. Now I can gauge where people don't know where that end point is. So they might think that, you know, like your parents tell you all the time when you're a kid, oh, it's not the end of the world. And then all of a sudden, when you see the end of someone's world, you go, oh, that's far. That's far from any piddly ass problem that I ever run into.
And that was, you know, I have a saying, I'm like, it could be worse. Like, because I've seen what the worst actually is. I'm like, I'm good. You know, I've had some problems in my life, but it could always be worse. And I mean, that time of my life was hard, and it was lonely, but also very communal, because all the paramedics, all the guys I worked with, like, we were sick fucks. Like, the shit that we've done as like mates and stuff like that to get over and cope with what we had seen, like it's people would look at you and be like, that's not right. But that's how we got over it, and that's as simple as it was. And without all those experience, and like, especially one of my good mates that he's now in Cyprus is Chris. Like, he was my assessor when I went through my qualification. Dude's not right in his head, but like, I'll take a bullet for him any day, because I know he's there if I have to. Like, if I pick up the phone, he's sitting in Cyprus, like, he'll make a plan. He'll phone someone who knows someone, and he'll get help in Australia if I needed to. But from that death comes that side of experience and family, I think. And without him, I mean, I wouldn't have got into the other shit I got into. Well,
because I think when I talked to Genta about, you know, what it is about CrossFit that was so unique that I think will never be replicated. Like, you know, I've talked on podcasts where F45, friends with Rob, who founded it. Like, we're fucking 4 blocks from his house right now. But like, I think what F45 lacks is that shared communal, and Junta kind of brought this to my attention from CrossFit, was that communal suffering. And in a weird way, people go through, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for, you know, because like life is suffering, depending on what philosophy text you read, that's what I ascribe to. Finding meaning in suffering is adopting responsibility, and so on and so forth. But like, people are like, oh, like, you know, my CrossFit family. It's like, CrossFit's, an EMOM or a chipper, that must be really hard. But like, that's, I don't want to say voluntary, but that's just physical. Like, you can rally around that and eat your fucking clean RX paleo bars made out of fucking wood chips and egg whites or whatever the fuck. But like,
dates. Don't forget dates. There's always dates.
Dates is so fucking hip, like extra hip. But like, if you've ever talked to anyone, and I can't empathize with this, I can only look back and try and understand, like, military, right, or paramedic, or where end of life, like the fucking Grim Reaper's in the equation. The community there is more than anything. I know families, like, I'm tight with my family, but that's different.
Yeah.
Like I think in some cases, like, you know, that's stronger than like
it's
any
a
sort of
deeper
blood
level.
bond. Yeah.
It's just it's until you've like shared blood with someone, like you'll never be at that level. Unfortunately, you can be best mates with someone until you've gone through that experience and you've shared the same trauma. It's not the same.
Yeah, and I found like, you know, there's a few times in the past like 5 years, like I've talked a bit about like having like anxiety attacks and being in the hospital and shit like that. So for me, my reference point is when I thought I was gonna die.
Yeah.
When I thought, you know, like I was fucking 280 pounds, I was doing shit that I probably shouldn't have been doing, just in the pursuit of like, hey, let's get big and strong. It was like flat broke, you know, relationship, young, not knowing, and I ended up fucking echocardiogram the whole nine. And I thought in that moment on my 26th birthday that I was dead.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck, couldn't he made it to 27? All the rock stars going 27. Fuck, you loser. What a loser. And I was like, and that's my relative thing. Like I have a lot of, you know, peripheral experience with death. I've been to 6 times, 7 times, maybe more times funerals than I've been to weddings.
Yeah.
It would just be like a thing. Like I learned how to tie a tie because I went to funerals so frequently, right? And it's not like, oh, he died of old age.
Yeah.
Right. Like I have one friend. I'm not even gonna mention it because it's just too bad. But like a peripheral experience with death is one thing. You know, being there firsthand is another. But then too, like your experience with like, you know, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Like you've been shot.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, that like how that wasn't the first thing I said in the podcast, I have no idea. This is like 190 episodes. I can safely say without a shadow of a doubt that you were the first person on RX Radio who's ever been shot. Your plaque's in the mail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so long story short.
No, long story long.
So with the paramedic side, myself and Chris that I mentioned, we got involved in an APU unit in South Africa. So yeah. We were on a patrol in
APU. What does APU mean?
Anti-rhino poaching units as well, anti-poaching units. Because that's the progression from paramedic, I suppose.
Naturally,
yeah. There was a lot of guns and stuff involved in the paramedic side. It's what we like doing.
Explain, just like peel back some layers on that. Like, so guns involved with paramedic. Let's start there and build out to anti-rhino poaching because people they're not connecting those dots.
So I mean, South Africa. Yes.
Oh,
there it is. That's as fast. Yeah. So I mean, it's a big no-no in South Africa right now for a lot of for the companies. Medical companies or emergency services and carrying a firearm are big no-nos in South Africa. Purely because it's seen as a conflict of interest. But unfortunately, living in South Africa, a lot of our emergency services actually are targets. Luckily enough, the company that I was working for didn't give a fuck. Simple as that. We carried guns. All of us kind of had, you know, either carrying. At the time, I was waiting for a license. This is not going to get in trouble, but anyways, Chris would give me his gun and I'd carry his gun because we were on the ambo together. That's as simple as it was.
So you're a paramedic carrying
a firearm,
a rifle?
A handgun at that time.
Okay, what are you carrying?
Glock 17. Simple as that.
Okay.
It's the gun of choice.
Okay.
Shout out Tarek Nordia, Glock dealer in South Africa.
Sure. Yeah. Future sponsor of the podcast. Yeah. Future cellmate.
Yeah, so we were carrying firearms for our personal protection because it's South Africa. Shit happens. You're an easy target. I carried every day of my life after I received my license. And I guess with that, we transitioned or we take up any opportunity to get involved in tactical stuff or as you do as a young boy, I guess. You want to play with guns and you want to go run around and, I don't know, shoot things.
Well, and you'd be an asset, too, in a tactical scenario with a medical background,
so
right?
that was literally why we got involved. The unit was looking for medics to be involved. I don't think they quite understood the involvement that myself and Chris were kind of going to get into
because we just went balls deep. It's as simple as it was. Did a couple trainings with them, and we were out on one of the patrols the one night, and it's like there was contact, purely from a facade, like we saw them in the distance. We could visually see what was going on.
Rhino poachers.
Yeah. So we were.
And where are you at this point?
We were somewhere in, I can't remember the name of the reserve.
But in South Africa?
Yeah, in South Africa.
Okay.
In South Africa at one of the reserves. At the time, that reserve hadn't dehorned. It was one of the only reserves that hadn't dehorned the rhinos.
As a deterrent.
Yeah.
Dehorn the rhinos, then people won't try and kill them. No reason to kill them.
The thinking behind it was if we medically take off or veterinarily take off the horn, it will slow down the poaching or try and stop the poaching because there's nothing there to take. Unfortunately, they leave whatever it was, 5 centimeters, a little bit there, and they go after that because that's still worth a huge amount of money. So we were at one of the reserves, and we had seen flashlights in the distance, so we started making our way there, and we made contact, and they spread out and everyone ran. And as I did, I was like, let's just run towards them. Started running, pitch dark, and baseball bat. Felt like baseball bat smacked me in the chest. I thought I ran into a tree, as one does, in pitch black.
We've all been there, right?
Been there, and luckily enough, I had a vest on, and I took a 9mm round to the vest. Why they had 9mm with them, not sure. There was 9mm. There was a couple other rifles that were picked up with the men who were found and prosecuted.
Right.
Prosecuted,
eye
but
for an eye, motherfucker.
And it was simple. I took a round to the chest, and as a medic, that's probably not what you want.
Right.
Big realization from that, though, unfortunately, and fuck it, whatever. The unit that we were with, not the unit I would ever want to be with going forward.
Really?
Just more of a unit that was playing pretend, which wasn't a nice thing to find out. Like at the time, it looked good, everything, was good, but they kind of just, after that experience, I just took a step back and I looked at it and I was like, these guys are just not at the level that I want them, or they should have been at for what occurred. Like, fuck, something worse could have happened.
Right. It's kind of like a little bit of cowboys and Indians going on.
Yeah, a little bit of that. And at the time, it was like the big thing, I guess. And we were just, we weren't jumping on board of something to, play cowboys and Indians. It was like, I want to be involved in this. Like, I dig nature from that side. I dig guns. Perfect. This is it. And that was the experience with them, which led to the next experience, which was, so I had a really bad injury, and I landed up tearing my labrum. Going into
hip.
Yeah.
Sorry. When you follow up the Glock to the chest, most people assume that's the bad
injury. Yeah.
Right.
Fair enough. Yeah. So at that time, I was also, powerlifting, at a relatively high level, I suppose. Represented South Africa in Canada in 2015 with a torn labrum. Came home, had the surgery failed. Had the second surgery failed. AV necrosis of head of femur, full hip replacement at 23. And again, at that time, I made that emotional decision to try and pull myself out of coaching, because I was coaching at a strength and conditioning facility at that time. And just made the emotional decision and stepped out. But at the same time, had kind of aligned my ties with a company that was doing distribution and logistics.
Okay, let's call
I'm going to get into it
because it's too fucking good. It's too good. You've lived a whole life between 18 and 23.
Yeah. And then what that logistics and distribution was import-exports of firearms and ammunition. So,
you're Nick Cage at this point.
Yeah, Nick Cage. I've actually got the license somewhere. It's in my wallet. I think it's certified to trade in firearms and ammunition.
That's hilarious. I'd give that to a cop if he pulled me over. Any questions? Yeah, we're going to have to check the trunk.
So that happened quite a few times. I'd be transporting a good quality amount, or good quantity amount of rifle rounds or rifles or something in the back of the ute.
Fucking Australia. It's a pickup truck.
Pickup truck.
It's a pickup truck.
Bucky in South Africa.
Not a Bucky.
It's a Bucky.
All right, I guess if it's loaded with guns, you can call it whatever the fuck you want, man.
And that was, that was the progression that occurred, I suppose, from paramedics, APU unit, import-export of firearms and
arms dealer.
Arms
dealer. That's not bad. That's something that's
pretty good.
Guaranteed someone at a Bugatti dealership's drop. What do you do? Arms dealer.
Yeah.
Now, you were doing this not just in South Africa, right? Because if you're importing and exporting, it's coming in from somewhere and going out somewhere.
Yeah, it was. So a little bit up into Africa. There was some stuff that
hit me with it. Where in Africa?
Where did we go? I'll be honest, I can't really put that out there, but
okay.
I'd rather not.
Fair enough. Just because that to me is like a crazy movie, like the craziest movies I've ever seen. When I think of and the list of movies I've ever seen are movies that depict and tell stories in Africa.
Yeah.
Like whether it's like Sierra Leone, fucking Freetown in Sierra Leone is like the craziest, I don't man, Chirac, Southside Chicago, come at me, represent Detroit, what? And it's like, you gotta be fucking joking.
You got nothing. You got nothing.
One homie from Senegal wakes up and before noon, he's seen more gangster shit you'll see in your whole life.
Yeah, and that's the desensitization of it, I guess, is that's how they live.
Yeah.
So we did that, and a lot of our stuff was very above board. As you are, all of this was legal, I suppose.
Right, at a certain point it has to be, right?
Yeah, at a certain point.
At a certain point it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And, we did a lot of work with Czech Republic and, the European countries did quite a lot of work with us. And I suppose, going into this, that realization was really interesting for me. I was going through quite an interesting time in my life. And it just wasn't what I wanted to do.
Really? What, pension wasn't great? There was no 401k plan?
There was just, health insurance wasn't great.
There was kind of a hole in my chest. Wait, that's the fucking Glock 17 round.
Yeah.
Haha, just kidding.
I don't know. It was difficult in terms of, I suppose, having a life. I carried a handgun and an M16 every day of my life, in that period of time. The rifle was down in the passenger seat. There was extra mags in the center consoles. I had a gun on me. I had 3-4 handgun magazines on me. That's what kind of started to occur. And there was one day that I came home and put the rifle down, and it was 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'd done transport or something. And I just sat there and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? What is this? And I don't know, I was still training and I'd been doing a bit of coaching and stuff like that. And I sat there. I remember I'd gone through a bit of shit in my life and pain and all that. And I was just like, this is not what I want to do. I'm not affecting anyone's life in a positive way.
Yeah. I mean, that's an argument that,
yeah.
Well, as a 20, that's a hard argument for a 40-year-old to make who's an arms dealer.
Yeah.
Right. That's a really difficult, because if I went to South Africa and I was to make and it's funny because I used this with a deal the other day. A deal is like an MD in Toronto, and if I were to make up a fake resume about what I did in Toronto, I would be Adil Khan. Hi, I'm Dr. Adil Khan. I was your resident surgeon, whatever fellow at this, and went to this school, and this is where I work. If I was in South Africa, or Ghana or something like that, what's your name? Well, my name's James Macintosh. Well, let me tell you what I do. I'm 23 years old. I'm an importer-exporter. What do you import and export?
And that
ammunition and firearms.
Yeah, that was, and interesting enough, it was never something that I ever said. In a couple of my mates that I trained with and stuff like that knew what I did, because I'd rock up to the gym with a strange bag or a hoodie that kind of didn't, or a jersey.
That hoodie
or
looks
whatever.
Like an AK-47.
That kind of looks really strange and strung over, and I'd walk into the office and put it in there, and a couple of them knew there was a rifle there.
Right.
And
I don't look at you and think ukulele.
Yeah, or guitar. Maybe. But that was the idea. Is it's I don't know. It was difficult. It was a difficult time in my life. I'm glad I went through it. I'll be honest. It reignited a big passion of mine of people, because like I wasn't interacting with people in like a good way.
No, yeah. I mean, you're kind of running the other way on the people thing there, when these things are put into production to remove them.
Yeah, that's it. But I don't know. It was a good time in my life. It was a shit time in my life.
But I think there's an awareness there that I don't want to say you're born with it, or I don't know where it comes from, but like and maybe it's just the experience of everything you've gone through up to 23, but for a 23-year-old person in that situation to be able to be like, yeah, no, like this is, I think a lot of people could get swept up by the identity of that, and it's pretty appealing. Like I know when I was at 23, man, like I was a bouncer and personal trainer, but fuck if I didn't tell a way better story than that. Yeah. Right? Like that is a great story, and it was real, and it's something that you could sell, like, and you had enough awareness to be like, no, I'm good. Whatever this is, however cool this is to rock up with the AR wrapped in the hoodie and put it in the office, it's not worth my life.
Yeah, that's as simple as the realization was. I sat there and I was like, it's not worth my life. And it's not worth like the people's life that was around me, because they became targets. Like there was one incident leaving the shop the one day, and it's like I was followed home. Like I identified the car as I came out, and I was like, that's a strange place for the car to be. It was a Range Rover, which, you know, quite a relatively popular car in South Africa, also very popular to be hijacked quite often. Big, nice, heavy car that if they ram your car, mostly it would stop. And I just picked it up, and I saw it as I drove past, and the lights suddenly turned on, and I was like, there's trouble here. Like that. Right. And it was, you know, that combination of events all occurred within a week, which is funny how the universe happens, I guess. And I just sat there and I was like, this is not right. This is not, I don't see a future in this, because, you know, tomorrow someone could try gun me down for the keys to the shop or something like that. And that was a reality. That literally was a reality, and it was something that we in the shop at the time all spoke about. And like we then, you know, high alert, and everyone then started carrying their rifles more often. And there's lots of those types of things that occurred, which are not normal. Fuck, it's
right. I mean, I have like some experience, just again, very peripherally with, you know, North American gangs and biker gangs and things like that, or bikey gangs as the Australians. And it's like, because it's not about you anymore.
No.
When it's at that level, like, you know, when there's lots of money or lots of drugs, or in this case, lots of guns on the line, it's like, they're not going to come for you. No. Right? Like, I remember a story of a guy who was running a marijuana operation out of his house. A smart dude, almost like a Walter White sort of situation. You know, it's Windsor, he's trying to make some extra cash. Was pretty good on the hydro side of things, and spun something up. And, you know, a guy knocked on his door. I was like, well, you know, this is what I do, suit and tie. Like, I could offer you some protection. And, like, very sort of formal business pitch. Guy was uncertain, kind of knew he was, like, into some shit, that he was rustling some feathers. And, you know, the hydro was in his backyard, and he lived with his wife and kids and stuff. And this guy approached almost like a Mormon on the front door. But, like, he clearly had some inside information that he didn't know was getting out. And then he came home 2 weeks later. His wife and kids were tied up in the kitchen. It's like, it's not about you anymore, man. It's like, no, I'm good. It's like, you're not good, dude. Like, if they're paying you the cordial visit, like, you're not good. So it's at that point, it's anyone else around you. If the rangies following you home, think there's just a range on you. Yeah. Like, there's not a range on like your girl or something like that. Well,
so that's it. That was the realization, I suppose. And I guess at that time, like, I'd never stepped out of the fitness industry. Like, I was, my mate's gym at the time was kind of up and running, and he was doing weightlifting and powerlifting, and I was helping out where I can. And then, you know, the blessing in disguise was the same injury that took me out of the industry brought me back into it. I went for my checkup with my hip, and my body rejected the implant. So I had my second replacement, but I sat there at the same time, and they turned around and they're like, hey, you need to recover a lot longer. Like, you can't go to work, you can't do what you're currently doing at the time. It was self-employed, I suppose. You're not really going to put down like yeah. So, you know, that was the injury that brought me back into the industry, and I sat there and I was like, cool, let's study. Like, I'm going to be sitting around for 2-3 months, let's study. And I started studying through an institution here in Australia, which gave me the accreditation to then work here. And that was the transition back into the fitness industry, or the people business, because that's what I loved. Like, that was the side of it that I missed, I guess. It's different talking, you know, guns all the time and ammo and selling and all of that type of stuff. I can sell that. That's fine. It doesn't ignite you. It doesn't fulfill you. It doesn't make you want to go home and like, yeah, that was a good day type scenario.
Yeah, because I think a good day in that business is a lot of people's very bad day.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a weird, and I can only imagine the thought process of like making a big sale. Like,
yeah,
you know, there's a meta impact in a negative fashion that you might be having. Like, sure, like, you can make the argument that guns are for protection. You could be preventing something from happening, but at some point on the other end of the bullet, it doesn't matter. Like, the story ends the same way.
But that was it. I mean, there was multiple times where people legally purchasing and signing out ammunition, and you know, like, I knew the guy who was coming. I was like, he was a French, little French guy who had ties to Mozambique, and he'd purchase 100,000 plus 2 to 3 rounds at a time, like every 2-3 months.
100,000 rounds
plus, and he was legally allowed to do that, and legally done, like bought on what we call like a sporting license, and that's what he would purchase. And you sit there and you're like, like, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, and hopefully doesn't.
Mom isn't gonna snitch.
But what I'm saying is, like, you know, that's, you know, this guy's high up in Mozambique. There's a lot of dodgy shit that goes into Mozambique. You could purchase an AK from Mozambique in South Africa in one of the townships for like $3,000 or 300 Aussie dollars.
Okay.
Easily.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting here going like, I'm happily helping this dude load cases of 1,600 rounds into the back of his car.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, like, I'm responsible for this, kind of.
Yeah, like, to me, have you ever seen the movie War Dogs?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's like, it's comical when it's, you know, it's Jonah Hill. It's fucking the biggest moral dilemma of your life when it's James Macintosh, right? Like, when Jimmy's the one loading up the fucking rounds, right? It's not like Bradley Cooper's coming to pick it up, and it's like, oh, I know that guy was in fucking Hangover. It's like, no, the weird French dude's gonna go load up the AKs in Mozambique. That's like politically unstable and like. Yeah. You know where those guns are going to end up in the hands of. Yeah,
that, like, and you hope that's not, because that's you pray that it's not.
We pray that it's not so you can go to sleep at night. You know when you wake up where they're going, right? Like, you're not stupid, but you're smart enough to get out of it altogether.
So that was it, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I also had the experience. Like, I can't wait for things to get back, and I can go back to South Africa and shoot my rifles and, you know, have a good time again with the guns, and then fly back to Australia.
Where you don't have like 7 mags in the fucking center console. Yeah, it's great. It's and that's the thing with you, man. Like, when we started talking and training together, it's like the perspective. I don't think you fully appreciate the perspective that you have and how you need, because most people, that I've talked to that share a similar perspective that to me is so admirable, they're beyond repair, right? They're soldiers who went overseas, and like, they were, to a certain degree, gifted an experience that, you know, you could count on one hand the number of people have to go through. Like, they know the guys who had to experience it by first name, because they were like in their platoon or in their infantry or whatever. And it's like, it's almost like they can't do anything with it, right? Like, the rest of their life is them coming to terms with what they've done.
Yeah.
And it's not the easiest thing. And I know a lot of guys who hadn't been able to do it, right? And then that consumes them, whether like it's alcoholism, whether it's drugs, whether it's suicide. Like, it's crazy. It's a crazy way to think, but like, the fact that you're grateful for it just indicates your perspective. But the fact that you can use that perspective and actually do good. Like, I was kind of making a joke the other day about like that David Goggins guy.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, dude, whatever. You were fat. You're not fat anymore. It's like, you know, like you're stopped doing the thing you shouldn't have been doing in the first place. Like, I look at that and it's fucking Uber driver motivation. I like, it's a phrase I've coined over time where it's like, you know, oh, he's on Rogan and he did like the SEALs. It's like, yeah, but was he boots on the ground? Did he do tour? Or was he just doing bud camp? You know what I'd be pissed off about? The guy who's shell shocked, who's done buds, done SEALs, gone overseas, done and seen some shit.
Yeah.
And this guy's sitting in the penthouse.
Loving life.
And yeah, it was like, he goes to Montana every year to like hunt wolves with his bare hands. I don't give a fuck what he does. He does that by choice.
Yeah.
Man, he doesn't like the callous, the mind. It's like, yeah, running a marathon is hard. I got out of breath just walking up the hill with that chicken earlier.
So did I.
Right? But it's like I think when the marketplace is overrun with people who, and I understand we're not in situations where we can inadvertently or are forced to sort of callous the mind, but people who've had that forced onto them, given their circumstance, that's a different approach, because I think most people who have it forced onto them can't, A, deal with it, or B, let alone deal with it and actually do some good with it.
Yeah.
Like, not many people after that are primed to go back into the people business, right? Like, after like the removal of people was your business before.
Yeah.
So that's why like I think it's such a unique perspective, because it's like you didn't go to, you know, some sort of fantasy camp, anti-rhino poaching unit. You didn't do a simulation. This is what it feels like to take a round to the fucking sternum, right? Like, that was real. And like I said, when we come down to telling stories, people can always tell when it's the truth.
Yeah.
Right? And like that perspective, and especially in an industry like fitness, which is so dumb. Like, it's so fucking dumb. I love it. Like, I thank God every day.
It pays the bills at the end of the day.
Yeah, but and it's like I've loved it when like I was homeless in my fucking 4Runner. Like, I loved it when I was 16 years old, and it's cool that enough people love it too. But I think every now and then the fitness industry needs a serious dose of perspective.
Yeah.
And I think you bring that in a fucking, like, in a buckshot, because not to turn a pun.
Good reference.
Thank
Well
you.
I'm proud of you for that.
I lived in the States for 7 years, so I do know a thing or two about guns, but it's hard because, like, and now, like, you transitioning into, like, you know, in the coaching space and working with clients online, I think it's good to see a coach be able to offer some perspective, especially now.
Yeah.
Like, training is so uncertain, right? With like everyone kind of, you know, getting into the online space, and I think that's great, and I think it brings a lot of value, but like, it only brings value if you can enrich your clients' lives. And I think your experience just sets, like, it sets the standard of perspective for everyone, because it's like, oh, you know, these are hard times. You're like,
it's not, exactly. It could be worse.
It 100% could be worse.
That's the whole point. That's where it comes down to. And it's like my big thing, and like, I don't speak about it a lot. I've told, you know, close friends and stuff like that, but it's not, there's people who have gone through worse. Like you're talking about, there's guys who have served. Like, I would have loved to go into the army or the military or whatever it is. Like, I wouldn't do it in South Africa, but like, I would have loved to do that. And I have a lot of respect for those people. That's why I look at my situation and I go, fuck, it could be worse. It honestly could be, because there's people going and living with demons and things and experiences that they've gone through that I think to them are a lot worse. And as you're saying, I think that's the perspective of a coach that needs to start to come forth, is you got to look at it and go, what are these people, what is as bad as it could be for them? And relate it to you and see how we can start to build off of their perspective and my perspective, and kind of build the new norm, or the new them, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say from that side.
And I mean, that to me is like, that's the value of coaching.
Yeah.
Other than that, you're just a fucking programmer.
Yeah, but that's exactly it. You're giving them reps and sets, and it's a lot more than that. Like we say, it's the people business. It's not just saying, hey, do 5x5. Any moron can give you that. Any template can be given to you for that. It's okay, like you say, dude had an 18-hour flight and then slept for 1 hour and then had 4 business meetings, and now he has to go max out, or 80% of his max. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But you got to be the coach, and you got to have the understanding and the perspective to go, maybe let's just make it a little bit lighter today, or let's change it up, or find the same approach or the same idea of what, or the intent behind what we were trying to do in the program, just change it up for the guy who's slept for 1 hour. Like that's the idea.
And I think for me, like, to have a coach with your pedigree to understand the importance and empathy of pulling back in training is something that I think is so, because a lot of people, myself included, would want to tell your story and pass it off as your own. And don't worry, all you do is podcast now, by the way. I hope you know this. The second everyone hears this, they're going to be like, I need to talk to this guy. Yeah. And now your words won't be your words anymore. They belong to podcast. I don't know what podcast is. Belongs to the entity of podcast. But like, people, I think, people seek out, and we talked about this earlier, like people seek out advice specifically from a person that is going to give them the advice they want to hear. Yeah. Right. And I think the best part about you is you're the motherfucking bait and switch, right? Because like, stern kind of military cut, Jack, dude, the accent is like the scariest thing ever. Like, I just want to call you Hans all the time. And it's like, you'd be the first guy to be like, maybe pull back. Because if I'm a type A, and I'd imagine the type of clientele that you attract, like, because people like to tell a story, right? Like when I was at Stanford, people loved that their trainer was also like, 330 kilo deadlift strength coach, whatever. Like I might as well have been a fucking, oh yeah, it's a Bichon Frise. You see, we got it from a breeder. Thing was fucking $70,000. It's like, that's what I felt like, because it was like, that's a great story. Like, look at my unnecessarily large personal trainer. One of my clients, hand to God, asked me, like, we were like good friends, and she was head of clinical psychiatry. She asked me to be like a bouncer at her house, like, oh, like you should come by, like we're having a bunch of people over. Zuckerberg's will be there. I'm like, I'm gonna rub. Are you serious? Like, dope, man. I was like, yeah, like if you could come by around 8, and you just gotta stand out front, and like, because we're close to East Palo Alto, and I'm just like,
I'm a bouncer. Stab and twist.
Man, I'm sitting there like Dobby waiting for a sock, like set me free. Like, what the fuck? And it's just like that would cut deep, right? But it's just like, she was type A. She looked at me and like she worked hard. All my clients were like, 16 hours on call, and if I looked at them and said, like, hey, we're gonna take a day and maybe we chill, they were like, yeah, okay. Like, this guy's no chill. Like, this guy, he's telling me to chill. And they seek out people who think, and I think that's the hard part with this imagery and this Goggins and grind includes Friday. I said TJ bullshit. Is like people are seeking that out. Like, one more, bitch, one more. Like, if I stood over her and said that, it's like, hey, I'd probably hurt her. But at the same time, it's like, that's not what she needs. No. That might be like, she comes to me because she thinks that's what she wants to hear. But my job is to tell her what she needs to hear. Yeah. And I think that's the greatest part about you as a coach is like, whew, like, you're the fucking 50 Cent / Hans of coaching. And at the same time, it's like the best asset you have is like, know when to pull back. Yeah.
And I'm grateful for all my experiences, including the injury I've gone through, because like you're saying, like I know when to put the hammer down, and I've done it, and I know when to put the hammer down and get hurt, or when I've put the hammer down and got hurt. And I think there's that beauty in programming, or understanding a client, a coach, an athlete, of when to just be like, hey, let's rein back a little bit, because they're on that edge, or they're on the tipping point of, we're about to go off and we're going to go down a spiral that I unfortunately went through. And I look back at it now, and I wish I'd had a support system. I'd be a coach, I suppose my parents tried, but no one listens to your parents.
Right.
To just be like, hey, let's just tap on the brakes a little bit, or the preventative programming side, or something along those, instead of just hammering it and causing the injury that I unfortunately have to live with now. But I take so much pride in, because I can give the response, or the circumstances that I've gone through, I can now relate to my clients. And that's what I do. Like I land up having a lot of the clients who are either coming off an injury or looking to not get injured, and that's kind of what I like doing with even if it's a gen pop, like the programming, I put a lot of time and effort into that to make sure that there's that the progression, the runway of progression, that one, because I don't want them injured. I don't want anyone to ever go through the pain I went through, or that experience that I went through, because it's shit.
Well, I think because to me, when you like recap and we start to think like, being 23, 24 years old, realizing that the range is following you from the warehouse and is going home, and it's like, oh shit, like how long have they been following me for? Am I going to get capped? Like making that decision and like seeing like all like with the paramedics, like really pushing, where the limits are, which is like when I always talk about coaches, like I think about shepherds, right? Like we have a very like, I think a slanted view, and it's cool that you're from Africa because like the original shepherds started in Africa, and like I'm a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell. Shouts out Malcolm Gladwell, that's two, and he talks about the David and Goliath story, which obviously if you look through like Babylonian, Mesopotamian, wherever the fuck, like that was in Africa, and we retell the story so many thousands of years later, and we go, oh, like David versus Goliath, David the shepherd. It's like, no, this isn't some fucking guy herding sheep up in Cork, Ireland, right? Like this is like, this guy's got to steer his flock around, lions and herds of prey animals. And like, he has to know the way because he has to have gone there before. Yeah. Right. So I think there's a lot of people in the coaching space that are trying to be I think they're just trying to be like a leader, not a shepherd, because the shepherd has to walk amongst or behind sometimes, or in front or beside, right, to like herd the people that they're the animals he's working with. And it is more of like a communal relationship where a lot of people just want to have like, get a following, get a bunch of followers. It's like, look, like those sheep aren't fucking just like, oh yeah, where's he going? We're going to follow the fucking Gandalf looking guy. It's like, no, like a shepherd is something like that has to use proxy and proximity to move this thing forward, but it has to know the way. Yeah. Right. So on the mental side, like going through, all the shit as a paramedic, and then the anti-rhino poaching unit, every time I say it, I just like shake my fucking head. And then, but on the physical side too, and how both of those help cross-pollinate, and like how it would probably be easier to overcome the hip thing as a consequence of being sort of callous mentally from this experience, right? And it was easier to get back into fitness even though the hip was painful because of the experience. And so I think for coaches, like a lot of people, and I get all the time, like a lot of people, they bypass the story in their real life just to try and tell the story on the internet. And it's like people can tell, right? And it's like, it's sort of like a circuitous way to look at it. But I think that's, for me, what people should be investing in is don't invest in, invest in a coach, sure, but like find a coach that's like that shepherd that's been there. Like, look, if I'm going somewhere, I want to make sure the guy who's taken me has been there. Yeah. It's like, look, I know where the borders are to this. Like, I know when too far is too far. How do you know? Because my left hip's not a left hip, and it's not even my left hip. Let's start there. Like, okay, fuck, all right, that's good. And it's like, well, like, I want a coach that'll push me mentally. It's like, yeah? How's slug to the chest sound? That good? Yeah. You push that? Okay, so it's like you can, regardless of where, I don't want to use the word like flock go, your clients go, you're there to be like, okay, if we're going to go this way, here's a boundary. Yeah. Here's your mental boundary. Here's your, fatigue boundary. How do I know? Because I was fucking working 20 hours one night, and this is what we ran into. Like, I know, I've been there. Or this is your, this is your discipline boundary. This is your, like, and you can be like, with experience, here's where it's okay to be in. Yeah. Right. And here are the borders we can push too. Right. So I think it's such a unique perspective that I don't think like a lot of coaches, again, like, because you don't tell your story nearly enough. Yeah. And like, we're doing this again at another point in like whenever you have time. And this is what you do now, by the way. Like, you are going to get, and I'll make sure of it too. I know people with podcasts because I think it's just such a good story to hear, because we barely talked about fitness. Yeah. But all we did was talk about fitness, because the two things I think we touched on, like the physical and mental sort of callousing, is the bottom line of everything we do. Yeah.
And I suppose like until you started mentioning it today, like when we chatted earlier, like I've never thought about it that way. And I don't think many people have. And that's maybe it's been a coin drop for me, or penny drop for me. Like I was like, actually, it's the story. Like you've just explained it now. I do have the mental side. I've got the discipline. I've got the injury prevention. I've got the story. kind of never really dropped the coin
Dude,
until
it's
right there.
the
Like,
best story ever, man. Like, because if you're like, I would watch it. I was watching I think it was, I don't know, it was called like First Blood or something. Like, I was watching some Leo DiCaprio movie, and it was based in Sierra Leone, and it was kind of the same thing. It was like, I'm like, oh, this is Jimmy. Like, I know this guy. This is like, what's Leo doing? What's he doing in Sierra Leone? Dude, he's like, dude, you should be in South Africa. But like, and that's what it is. And then that best part is like, you did it inadvertently. Yeah. Like, I know friends, and myself included, like, I've done stuff because I know now that, like, it is about telling a story, right? Like, it is. And that's the cool part about the podcast is, like, yeah, my story's whatever. I was homeless and I had an anxiety attack. It's like, well, ease up being on 280, maybe lower it on stress, go for a fucking walk, you asshole. Yeah. It's like, that's not a good story. And now it's like, I can pick. Like, I can pick the characters in my story, and I do that in a very cerebral way. And it's cool. Like, I always think of the quote, like, if your life was a movie, would you want to watch it? Right? Like, if I'm driving in a car somewhere and it's a scene in a movie, it's like, this is not like you get one take, man. Yeah. Like, you might as well. And you were out there filming the best action flick, Michael Bay, out in the fucking desert, Serengeti shit, and like there was no cameras rolling. Yeah. And I think, to me, like, that's the baddest story ever, is the one that gets done when no one thinks, or when no one's watching. Yeah. Right? So that's it. Like, to me, and again, like, I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast have podcasts, and like, I've friends with like bigger podcasts, or that they do more often, and it's like, because I don't think we've even scratched the surface. Like, this is just Cole's Notes version. Like, all right, let's hit the high points. Let's talk about like the M16s, the Glock, getting shot in the chest, the rhinos, the paramedic stuff, the traumatic fucking hip surgeries, and a bit about coaching. And that's just the surface.
That's just the
That's a trailer to a movie that I want to see, bro. Like, it's I don't know, it's wild, man. And I know, like, you haven't done many of these, which blows me away. And you do now, and I think you should, because people eat up fabricated stories. Right? And it's like, I don't want to fucking listen to David Goggins talk about running up his fucking whatever. Like, sick, bro. Like, way to not be fat anymore. Congratulations, you stopped doing the thing you shouldn't have been doing in the first place, right? Can we listen to James now, who's actually done some shit? Cool, thanks. Like, I don't know. It's weird. Like, people, like you said, like, they're by association. And I think for me, like, when we met and we started hanging out, it's like, I fuck with this guy, like, association. Like, I want to be because that's like, I'm sitting here going like, how cool is this? How cool is this? He got shot. The guy got shot in the chest. But like, I think it's a certain level of credibility and integrity that the fitness industry especially lacks. Yeah. So I do appreciate you kind of taking the time and just giving us a glimpse into that, because I think it's a rare story. It's one that you're going to tell more and more often. So I do apologize.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. And I'll put all the stuff at the beginning as far as like Instagram handle and stuff like that. So don't stress on that. So I'll record an intro and I get to pump you up without you around.
Sounds like fun.
Well, no, because that's the thing. You're such a humble, like, well, yeah, it's James. I'm here. But, if you want to maybe, and I'm like, no. Like, if you need a coach, like, this is the kind of coach you need. If you need a programmer, go off into the fucking Reddit thread and get some dickhead with a PhD to write you a program. You want a coach, this is what makes a good coach. And it stems from experience, and it stems from lateral thinking, and it stems from empathy, and that just for you just is the craziest fucking epicenter of all of those things. So I appreciate you taking the time, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, bro.